What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. We are outside. It is really cold and we are helping out the chickens today. We're going to make a sweet feeder that you can put a whole 50 pounds of feed into. Alright, I got a couple of 3/4 inch pieces of plywood up here on the workbench and the miter saw, and I got no plan going into this. I will have a set of plans for you guys when I'm done so we make sure it works, but this is what I'm going off of. Really rough sketch right here. Got to cut a couple things down on the table saw, get them to the proper dimensions, and we got to put an angle on these boards. I'm just going to measure out, get the angle at first, and we can use the table saw sled over there to get the right angle on our work pieces. Once we got the bulk of the boards cut out on the table saw, it's time to find that angle that we want for the lean-to aspect of this chicken feeder. And I did that just with a tape measure, took 4 inches off one side, struck a line, and then the tricky bit is to use this digital angle finder jig tool. And that actually allows me to find the exact angle, which I can then take the inverse of that over to the table saw sled, adjust it there, and cut my workpiece. Not really something you can do on the miter saw because it is a wide board, and if you had anything wider than this you'd have to go to a track saw or a circular saw with a straight edge, but it is cleaner on the cut and cleaner with the dust over on the table saw. Before we leave the table saw, the back board, which holds the feed on this chicken feeder, needs an angle just so that we get a nice tight fit when the roof is put into place. So I beveled the table saw blade, made that cut real quick. All of the assembly for this chicken feeder is going to be with wood glue and pocket screws. So to make super quick work of the pocket holes, I went over to the Craig Foreman on my double flip top workstation, whacked out all those pocket holes so we can get quickly on to the assembly. You may have noticed that I'm using pre-finished plywood. This is all left over from the lake house kitchen build, and it's a good thing, I guess. It's going to keep some moisture out. We got to do a little bit more work to make sure all the edges are sealed, and we'll get to that later. But to get a good glue adhesion, you need to get that finish off of there. So I just used a chisel and just scraped it off a little bit, and that'll give our glue a good clean board to bond to. Marking out the bottom so that we can get 4 legs, so to speak, just cutting out kind of an angle thingy in the middle of the legs on the bottom sides, and we can do that real quick with a jigsaw. Again, all the measurements that you need for these cutouts and where the boards go are in the digital plans that you can find at DIYtyler.com. Again, like I said, the assembly is with wood glue and 1 1/4 inch coarse pocket screws. I am using Titebond 3 because this project is going outside, although it should never get wet. But we are going to have moisture that we'll need to contend with over time, and I want to make sure this project lasts a long time, so that's why I am going with the Titebond 3. So we have our front and back V boards that are going to allow the chicken feed to kind of pile up in there and fall through the opening at the bottom. These just go in the lines that you will have to mark off based off of the plans and in the areas that you scraped off the finish, at least in my case. You guys probably won't actually use pre-finished plywood. Again, it was leftovers that I had, which is why I am using up the scraps, because plywood is very expensive right now in early 2022. So we just have all of these screws into place with the wood glue. This thing's not going to go anywhere. once we have the sides for the feed holder in place, we need to add something that's going to make the chickens poke their head through and make sure it's just not an open feeding trough. So these boards slide into place against that V board that we just put in, and they are fastened into place again with the wood glue and 1 1/4-inch pocket screws. There is one on each side. And then we can actually move on to the portion where the feed is going to sit, and then the sides that are going to hold the chicken feed into place. And I should say that this chicken feeder, we use it with pellets, chicken layer pellets, hen layer pellets, but you can use crumble just the same. We added those sides into place, and then the bottom squeezes in between there, and I did it this way so that you wouldn't have to see the plies of the plywood, and it's actually covered with the portion that holds the feed into place. A little bit of finagling to make sure we had everything cleaned up, the wood glue, so it wasn't all sloppy, made sure everything was in its final place, and added those 1 1/4-inch pocket screws. This video has been brought to us by our friends at Carolina Shoe, whose boots we are all wearing out here today. And as you can see, it's pretty nasty here in Michigan. It's all wet, and our Carolina boots keep us high and dry, and our arch supports supported, and they're great boots. You guys can save 25% off by using the code DIY25 using the link in the description below. That is a rotating category, so the boots do change there over time, so you want to keep checking back if there is a particular series of boot or shoe that you are after. Again, DIY25 for 25% off those select pairs of boots. Get some Carolina boots, they won't disappoint you. As I'm sitting here editing this video, it probably would have made sense to put some pocket holes along the bottom sides of that bottom board that we just put into place, but I used my countersink bit and added a couple of screws from the side. I mean, it is a chicken feeder after all. I don't think anyone's feelings are really going to be hurt seeing those screw heads. Now it is time to move on to the roof section. So there is a 2-inch overhang all around, and is that important for water? No, not necessarily, but we don't need any chicken Deutsch getting down there in the chicken feed, so we want to make sure we have a nice overhang. And we do need this thing to hinge because we're going to hinge the roof up to dump in at least the 40 or 50 pound bag of chicken feed is what I'm hoping fits in here. And in hindsight, after putting some feed in, we can absolutely fit probably about 60 or 70 pounds of feed in here if you needed such a long span without actually going out and visiting your chickens. So we're going to make sure we have a uniform installation of those hinges with an equal offset on either side, and just using some screws to make sure I don't go through that 3/4-inch plywood. I don't think I actually used the screws that were supplied with the hinges. I had some extra wood screws, and that's what we used that were not too long. And the hinge seems to work just great. Since the chickens will be constantly pooping on top of this thing, and we have the chicken coop and the shed, which is where the chickens live, covered with the Endura paneling already. This is an older piece, their original style of Endura panels, and I'm going to use that because it's all going to look nice and uniform out there, and this is good quality stuff that will last a long time. Very easy to cut with a utility knife, especially if you're going in between the corrugations. If you have to go across the corrugations, which we don't in this case, it's best and easiest I've found to use a circular saw. So we're going to cut this Endura panel to its proper width, and then we will put it up on the roof. And these closure strips are not exactly necessary in this case because we don't need the open ventilation, but I do want to make sure that we don't get bees or maybe a bird that's going to climb up in that corrugation and make a nest and be there in a place that we don't want it. And then I'm adding a lot of screws, more than I actually need for something like this, but I like uniformity and symmetry, and that's what I was going for. As you can very clearly see here, we have a little bit of extra length with those big Endura screws, so we're just going to take the angle grinder and whack them off real quick. So the kids are putting a little bit of Total Boat Halcyon Clear on the edge just to seal the edge. And then I'm actually going to use some waterproof T-Rex tape on the bottom, which will sit in the dirt in the chicken coop. Just wrap the edge so that that doesn't sit in a puddle, and the rest of it we're going to get with the Halcyon. And then we got a piece of Onduline Ondura paneling on the top.
Okay, now I have a little kid paint.
You got the little girl brush?
Yeah, and a big boy brush.
Now this feeder is pretty bulky to wrap your hands around and be able to move, and that's even empty. I haven't tried to move it with any feed in it actually, but to make it easier moving empty, I'm going to add a little handle using a screw with a big head. It's actually a 10s screw and some chain. This will just be a quick little handle that'll allow us to move this thing around relatively easily if we need to. As I mentioned when the kids were sealing the edges, on the bottom I'm actually going to be using T-Rex waterproof tape, and the desire here is to make sure that no moisture gets into the bottom of these legs, which is plywood. It will delaminate if it does get wet. So this T-Rex waterproof tape, I'm hoping will give us plenty of years of making sure no moisture works its way up into this plywood. Take all that paper and shove it. All right, it's beautiful and sunny, but by golly is it cold. It's like it was 8 this morning. No wind, which helps. But anyway, we're bringing the feeder out to the chicken coop, which you saw us build the chicken coop a couple of months ago. We also built a shed that abuts up to the chicken coop. So and here's all the hens following us out here. Can't see the screen, so I don't know what we're looking at. But anyway, we're gonna get the feeder in here. We'll put some food in and see if it works.
There's some on the other side.
Perfect. Look at that. So they knew what to do. They were kind of hungry, and it was only about half a bag of feed, but working perfect, and we can certainly put a full bag in there. But as I was hoping, it kind of just piled up and did not come pouring out of here at all. Chickens knew right what to do, and they can reach right in. I wanted to make sure it was low enough for them, and hopefully we don't get any blackbirds in there. But anyway, so far looking pretty good. Go ahead and close the lid, Sarah. And they will climb on top and poop all over the Ondura roofing, which is red like that one, which is covered in poop and you can't even tell. But yeah, kind of wanted to do the same thing going on out here, so it looks pretty slick. Well, that is a wrap on the chicken feeder, and so far it looks like it is working out very, very well. I only put in about half a bag, but we would easily be able to put in the full 50-pound bags of feed, which is what I wanted to do, and I still don't think it's going to make any difference in the feed possibly pouring out of the front or the back side there where the chickens reached their head in. They knew right what to do, ran right in there, started to eat. As you can see, they are kind of hungry right now, although it is the time of day that the kids would typically feed them. But another reason we wanted this is the kids will feed them once or twice a day, morning or night, and the chickens go for a long time without food. I noticed when I would come out here that they seemed a little bit hungry, so we wanted to make sure that they were well fed throughout the day. Anyway, it looks like it's working out really, really well. If you guys would like plans for that, link to them down in the description below. Hope you guys enjoyed the build. If you did, please hammer that thumbs up button, as it helps us out and gets this video in front of more eyes. I can't feel my hand that's holding you, so I need to get inside and get warm. You guys have a good one. Couples?
3, 4, 5,
6.
6, yeah.
Nice.
This one I know is Thunder's.
So shed keeping everything dry. Hen houses that you saw inside of the coop that we built. Coop's on the other side, and chickens are loving it.